Have you ever noticed how the world around us, like a grotesque mirror, sometimes reflects something so absurd, so provocatively irrational, that the only thing the soul can do is shrink into a ball of dull irritation? This clown dancing on the ruins of common sense, this mad jester shamelessly putting on a circus of absurdity right on the main stage of our lives, be it in the news feed, in the behavior of public figures, or far more painfully, in the actions of those close to us. How many times, clenching your fists, have you watched someone seemingly intentionally destroy everything around them? Their career, relationships, reputation, acting with a defiant, almost childlike spontaneity, as if unaware of the consequences, or even more acutely, how your own inner voice, that sarcastic commentator, pushes you towards actions you later bitterly regret, unable to understand where this irrational urge for self-sabotage or that very joke that turned into a disaster came from. This is not just an external phenomenon, not just a random set of events. It is a shadow cast by your own, as yet unrecognized, inner jester, the very trickster that lives within each of us. And it is in this burning aversion, this sharp feeling of injustice or even disgust, that lies not only the key to understanding, but also a powerful lever for transformation. What grips you so strongly externally is merely a reflection of that very inner exile, that part of your psyche that was rejected, suppressed, driven into deep shadow, but continues from its confinement to send signals, sometimes very destructive ones. This inner exile is our own trickster archetype, which, deprived of the light of consciousness and the opportunity to be integrated into a whole personality, distorts and mutates, transforming from a potential creator into an uncontrolled destroyer. It manifests as a compulsive urge to break rules, in destructive humor, in irrational rebellion against authority, or conversely in blind obedience that conceals inner sabotage. It is an energy capable of turning the world upside down, but when unconscious, it merely turns your life upside down, creating chaos where there could have been a creative spark. It is this exiled jester that can be both the cause of the greatest catastrophes and the architect of groundbreaking solutions. If only we dare to look it in the eye and restore its rightful place in our psychic structure. But why does this mechanism work so flawlessly? Why does a once exiled part continue to influence our lives so powerfully, manifesting in the most unexpected and often painful forms, sometimes even masquerading as our true will? To understand this, we need to return to the scene of the very first transgression, to where this exile began, where energy intended for life was labeled and rejected. This journey is not to a chronological date, but to that fateful moment when innocence met judgment, and a part of your authentic essence was forced underground, hiding from the world and from yourself. We have traced how the chaotic, at times absurd nature of the world reflects the shadow of the inner jester, that very archetypal trickster that sometimes manifests in a destructive dance around us, and sometimes in our own inexplicable self-sabotage. This irrational, seemingly alien force did not appear out of nowhere. It is the product of time's subtle, almost invisible work, like roots that go deep into the soil of our personal past. It was there, in the depths of the developing psyche, that the seeds of its exile, its going underground, were sown. Remember, if you dare, that turning point, that barely perceptible yet irrevocably life-altering crack in the foundation of your being. When exactly, at what age, under what circumstances did you first realize that qualities essential for genuine flourishing, the ambition that drives you to peaks, or healthy aggression that protects your boundaries, the right to make mistakes that opens the path to wisdom, or vulnerability that allows you to be sincere and profound, were declared bad, shameful, dangerous? When were you led to believe that expressing these vital aspects of your nature would lead to rejection, pain, or the loss of love or recognition? Perhaps it was a parent's judgmental gaze when you laughed too loudly or desired something too intensely that seemed excessive to them. Perhaps it was a teacher's cold whisper when your curiosity went beyond what was allowed, or a bold question challenged authority. Or perhaps it was a peer's mockery when you dared to be yourself, revealing your true essence, different from the accepted norm. It was at this moment when a part of your true essence was severed, deemed unacceptable, that it did not disappear. It went into the shadow, into the dark corners of the psyche, where, deprived of the light of awareness and integration, it began to distort and mutate. That inner jester, who could have been a brilliant strategist, a rebel for justice, a destroyer of outdated dogmas, turned into a saboteur, a mocker, someone who unconsciously undermines your own foundations just to remind you of its existence. If ambition was suppressed, it transforms into chronic procrastination, an inability to finish what was started, envy of others' successes, passive aggression against oneself. If healthy aggression was rejected, you will find yourself either in endless passivity, becoming a victim of others' manipulations, or in uncontrolled outbursts of rage that destroy everything around and leave behind only ashes of regret. If the right to make mistakes was forbidden, it will generate paralyzing perfectionism, a fear of any action that might be imperfect, a constant avoidance of new experiences that could bring growth. And if vulnerability was labeled as weakness, your trickster will erect walls of alienation, wrap you in an armor of cynicism, depriving you of the possibility of genuine intimacy and deep emotional exchange. It becomes the one who throws sand in the eyes of your ambitions, trips your confidence, whispers of your worthlessness when you take risks, or makes you avoid intimacy, fearing to be hurt. It is your inner exile who, deprived of its rightful place in consciousness, is forced to act from the shadows, creating chaos where there could have been creative breakthrough and genuine freedom. This drama of suppression, this inner civil war, played out not only in your unique experience, it is part of a deeper, universal mechanism that drives the entire human psyche, like an ancient, unpaid debt demanding its return, or the shadow of an exile forever wandering at the gates of the tribe, reminding us of the broken balance and the true cost of what is hidden. We have already touched upon how the irrational principle, our inner jester, manifests itself in the chaos of everyday life and in acts of self-sabotage, often being a perverted echo of our suppressed essence. But to truly understand this dynamic, it is necessary to return to a fundamental principle, to the core of what we call the shadow, that grand invisible force that shapes our destinies from the depths of the unconscious. Imagine an ancient tribe where each member has their role, their gift, their place under the sun of collective consciousness. But what happens when one of its parts, be it courage, tenderness, ambition, or even the right to make mistakes, is declared dangerous, unacceptable, shameful? It is exiled, not physically, but from the circle of conscious acceptance. This is not just a metaphor. It is an existential act of internal banishment from the tribe. The banishment of a part of oneself from one's own wholeness, from one's inner circle of trust and self-acceptance. We ourselves become executioners for our own potentials, hiding them in the dark dungeons of the psyche, in that realm Jung called the shadow. But energy does not disappear without a trace. It does not dissolve into the ether of oblivion. It merely changes form, mutates like a living organism deprived of light and air. This is the energy of an unpaid bill. Every suppressed emotion, every unexpressed truth, every unrecognized talent. This is a promissory note that will sooner or later come due with interest. And the longer we delay this payment, the more destructive its arrival becomes. Recall the Erinyes, the goddesses of vengeance from ancient Greek myths, the relentless pursuers of those who committed a crime until the debt was paid. They are not just an external force. They are the archetypal embodiment of the inner necessity for justice, that very energy of an unpaid bill that pursues us from the depths of our own soul. Thus, our shadow, especially when it takes the form of a perverted trickster, becomes this unrelenting force that, having been exiled, returns to destroy balance, sow chaos, and force us to confront what was so carefully hidden. It will not rest until it is recognized, until it is allowed to return to the bosom of consciousness. These manifestations, be it procrastination, biting cynicism, irrational rage, or paralyzing perfectionism, are not random glitches. They are merely various masks of the same exile who craves to be seen, integrated. It knocks at the doors of our perception, sometimes so persistently and destructively that it causes in us not just discomfort, but a deep irrational aversion to certain types of behavior or even to entire categories of people who we feel embody everything we hate. We have spoken of the inner jester, the trickster, who, exiled into the shadow, becomes a source of absurdity, self-sabotage, and destructive laughter in our lives. But this exiled energy does not merely float in the air. It takes forms, manifesting through specific, often unbearable types of people, like mirrors reflecting our own unrecognized shadow. These reflections evoke irrational aversion, anger, contempt, the very feelings that signal a collision with a part of ourselves that we once rejected. Consider for a moment what types of people in your environment, or even those you've only heard about, evoke in you an inexplicable, almost physical aversion, deep contempt, or burning irritation. Perhaps it's those who constantly undermine authority, or those whose irony always wounds, or those who, seemingly for no visible reason, sow chaos and discord. It is likely that in them you see projections of those shadow aspects of the trickster that rage within you, but remain unrecognized. Among others, 3 archetypal figures, nourished by the trickster's shadow, most vividly embody its destructive power. The first is the malicious wit. Their humor is like a thin, poisoned blade that cuts rather than amuses. They are masters of words, but use them not for play or insight, but for humiliation, devaluation, and destruction. Their laughter is not joy, but a sarcastic smirk that exposes others' weaknesses, making the victim feel foolish, inadequate, exposed. They despise sincerity, ridicule noble aspirations, and dissolve any endeavor in the acid of cynicism. In their presence, the air becomes thin and the soul shrivels, trying to hide the slightest glimmer of hope or vulnerability. The second archetype is the architect of chaos. This is not merely a slob or a procrastinator. This is a person whose subconscious desire is to create disorder and confusion. They might manifest as a perpetually late colleague whose absence at key meetings derails projects, or as a family member constantly forgetting promises, bringing disharmony into established routines. Their actions, seemingly random or incompetent, are in fact a subtle but powerful form of sabotage. They destroy structure to avoid responsibility, to avoid being constrained by rules, to preserve the illusion of their freedom, even at the cost of others' peace of mind. Their goal is not direct conflict, but a slow, exhausting undermining of foundations, after which they, like a shadow, disappear, leaving only ruins behind. And finally, the third, perhaps the most insidious, the master of illusions. This archetype embodies the trickster's distorted mastery in playing with reality. They do not lie directly, but skillfully shuffle facts, sow doubt, and create a distorted perception of reality with hints and half-truths. Their power lies in the manipulation of others' minds, in the ability to tangle threads so that the victim themselves begins to doubt their own sanity. Remember, for example, Nikolai, a person whose presence in any team invariably led to misunderstandings and conflicts. He never said anything overtly bad, but his offhand remarks, "Are you sure Maria meant that? I thought Peter wasn't thrilled with your idea," were like weed seeds sown in fertile soil. He didn't accuse, merely shared observations. But after his words, everyone began to suspect everyone else. He reveled in this unseen game, watching his colleagues who were friendly yesterday look at each other with distrust today. When chaos reached its peak, Nikolai would distance himself, offering to help sort things out, like an outside observer, though he was the invisible conductor of this drama. He knew how to create tension, and then, like a spider, weave new threads leading to even greater confusion, enjoying his power over others' perception. These figures are merely external manifestations of the inner exile, that very trickster who, being suppressed, mutated into something destructive. They are markers of something within us that we have turned away from and that now demands our attention. And behind each of these demons, behind each of these repulsive traits, hides not just a vice, but a distorted, perverted force, which in its true, unadulterated form could become a great gift, a powerful resource. We have spoken of the shadows that dance on the walls of our psyche, those distorted reflections that were once life-giving forces but became destructive specters due to our fear. The fear of being seen, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being like that. But what is the price of this fear? What is the burden of the unaccepted shadow when it, like an inner jester broken free, begins to dictate our lives, pushing us towards decisions that seem absurd, but are in fact merely an echo of what is suppressed? Imagine a leader whose soul craves harmony and whose mind craves order. He fears being known as a malicious wit, someone who wounds with words, who uses humor as a scalpel for humiliation. For in childhood, his sincere directness was called rudeness, and his ability to piercingly see lies was deemed tactlessness. Now, when confronted with incompetence in his team, the leader remains silent. His inner suppressed honesty, which if integrated could be a sharp but healing tool for feedback, mutates into passive aggression. He avoids direct conversations, instead making biting but vague remarks, or entirely shies away from confrontation, allowing problems to fester. Projects fail, the team is demotivated, and the leader, unaware, becomes what he so feared, a source of destruction, but not through poisonous humor, but through toxic silence and avoidance. His fear of being like that demon from the past forces him to make decisions that not only fail to solve the problem, but create a new, deeper rift. Or consider the artist. Their soul dreams of freedom, bold experimentation, and breaking boundaries. But they remember how their early attempts at innovation were labeled architecture of chaos, disorder, irresponsibility, and inability to follow rules. Society, parents, teachers all demanded structure, predictability. And now, when the market demands new forms, new ideas, the artist clings to old, proven methods. They fear being the one who destroys, who creates chaos, who violates the established order. Their suppressed creativity thirsts for novelty and adaptability, instead of becoming a driving force for progress, turn into a paralyzing fear. They cannot adapt. Their works become outdated. Their voice is lost in the chorus of bolder ones. Their fear of becoming a destroyer leads them to become a victim of destruction, their own stagnation, or the seer possessing the gift of persuasion, the ability to inspire and lead. But in their memory lies the image of the master of illusions, someone who manipulates, distorts truth, uses words as weapons of deceit. Perhaps they themselves were once a victim of such a manipulator, or their early ability to influence was used for harm and condemned. Now, when they need to present their project to investors or inspire their team to take a risky step, the seer becomes speechless. They fear being that person who plays on emotions, who is too persuasive. Their words become dry, logical, devoid of passion. They refuse metaphors, emotional appeals, everything that could be interpreted as manipulation. As a result, their ideas, however brilliant, remain unheard, their potential unrealized. The fear of being like the one they branded as a deceiver deprives them of the opportunity to be a true leader and inspirer. But I don't want to be like that, someone among you might exclaim. I strive for ethics, for stability, for good, not for destruction. And this is an absolutely correct, noble aspiration. The paradox is that precisely this aspiration, taken to an extreme, to the complete denial of certain qualities, leads to their destructive manifestation. We are not talking about becoming malicious, chaotic, or manipulative. We are talking about integrating the original energy that lies at the core of these archetypes. Healthy aggression is the ability to protect one's boundaries. Creative chaos is the ability to innovate. The art of persuasion is the ability to inspire and lead. When we refuse to acknowledge these forces within ourselves, they do not disappear. They go into the shadow, mutate, and begin to act from the unconscious, manifesting precisely in the forms we so fear. They become uncontrollable because we refuse to control them. Your fear of being like those distorted reflections we discussed forces you to make unfavorable decisions, depriving you of full self-expression and undermining your potential. Think how often you suppressed an impulse for courage, for honest confrontation, for creative disorder, for powerful words, just because you feared crossing an invisible line and becoming what you condemn. This fear is not a wall, but rather a trap, keeping you from living a full life. The irony of fate is that by avoiding becoming a demon, you yourself become its victim, allowing it to act through you, but without your conscious control. However, the shadow is not only what we reject and what causes us pain, sometimes it also holds what we admire in others but refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. We have delved into the labyrinths of the shadow, experiencing its chaotic dance, its destructive manifestations as the inner jester, exiled into the subconscious, distorts reality and sabotages our existence. We have seen how it, like an unpaid bill, returns in the form of malicious wit, an architect of chaos or a master of illusions, reflected in those we instinctively reject. But the shadow does not merely hide what we reject, what seems ugly or dangerous to us. It also holds what we fear to accept as our own, what blinds us with its brilliance when we see it in others. There's another facet, shining but no less insidious, the golden shadow. This is not a dark cave of suppressed fears, but a dazzling altar upon which we place our most valuable, most precious qualities, simply because we do not believe they belong to us. These are the gifts, the abilities that inspire awe, admiration, almost reverence. When we see them embodied in another person, we project onto them our inner genius, our untapped power, our unrealized beauty, and in doing so, we voluntarily deprive ourselves of access to these resources, making ourselves spectators of our own unplayed drama. The paradox is that the trickster, whom we exiled for his destructive play, for his uncontrolled need to break outdated forms and boundaries, can be the very same source of brilliant insight, bold originality, and vibrant, overflowing creativity that we deify in another. We admire an artist who boldly breaks canons, an entrepreneur who easily overturns the market, or a speaker whose wit disarms and pierces. We see something in them that seems unattainable to us. Instead of acknowledging that spark within ourselves, we place them on a pedestal, offering them our unrealized gifts and dormant talents as if paying homage to an external deity. This is self-sabotage of the highest order. By projecting our golden qualities, we don't just abandon them, we actively clip the wings of our own potential. We become prisoners of our own admiration, keeping ourselves in the role of perpetual students and eternal admirers, instead of becoming masters of our own lives. We don't allow ourselves to be as witty, as daring in dismantling the old, or as skilled in creating the new, because we are convinced these qualities belong to someone else, someone special. Allow this question to resonate in the quiet space of your inner self. Who is your idol or object of admiration in the realms of courage, wit, capacity for transformation, or creative chaos? What are your own talents and unrealized abilities that you have gifted to them by projecting onto their image? The answer to this question is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is the key to reclaiming your true power, which awaits its time to be integrated. For true alchemy begins when we stop being mere spectators of our own potential and start collecting the golden dust scattered across others' images to forge from it our own unique, unparalleled masterpiece. Recognizing that these qualities belong to you is merely the first step. True transformation demands action, a reclaiming of what has been given away. We have traversed a labyrinth of mirrors where the trickster's reflections multiplied, taking on the guise of a malicious wit, then the form of an architect of chaos, then the mask of a master of illusions, sowing doubt like wind across desolate dunes. We have seen how these distorted manifestations, once banished to the shadows, are merely inverted gifts of piercing honesty, boundless creativity, and the ability to influence the world. And we have realized that not only the dark facets, but also the golden deposits of our own talents are often projected outward, leaving us feeling empty and deprived of our own power. Now that we have dared to gaze into this abyss, it is time not merely to contemplate, but to act. For true freedom lies not in avoiding the shadow, but in embracing it, in reclaiming every atom of your essence, both what frightens and what fascinates you. Imagine the power that manifested as destructive sarcasm can become sharp, insightful wisdom. The energy that generated chaos can create new worlds. The ability to manipulate perception can transform into the gift of inspiring and healing. This is more than just integration. It is alchemical transformation. It is a new philosophy of being, where every aspect of your soul, even the darkest and most frightening, is not rejected, but recognized as a unique resource, an inexhaustible source of your true might. You are not a victim of your inner demons. You are their architect, their master, the one who can forge their chains into wings. To begin this process, I propose a simple yet profound exercise. Let's call it Dialogue with the Jester. Over the coming week, each time you detect a manifestation of that destructive trickster energy within you, whether it's a biting comment, a sudden urge to disrupt order for chaos, or an internal voice undermining your confidence, pause. Do not judge. Instead, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What exactly is happening right now? Describe the manifestation as honestly as possible without embellishment. 2. What positive quality, what gift, what potential is hidden behind this manifestation? Consider honesty, creativity, the capacity for transformation, courage, or the drive for freedom. 3. How could this gift be manifested constructively right now or in the future? For example, if it was sarcasm, perhaps it's a need for wit that could be channeled into creative expression or honest yet delicate dialogue. Write down your answers. This is more than just a record. It's an act of recognition, an act of reclaiming your power. You will see how your inner jester, when acknowledged and accepted, ceases to be a destructive force and begins to reveal its true potential, the potential for transformation, for healing laughter, and for wisdom that manifests in the most unexpected forms. This is not a struggle, but a dance with that part of yourself that has always been there, waiting to be seen and embraced. And as you learn not only to hear the echo of your inner jester, but also to understand its language, you will discover that the world around you begins to change. For what we project returns to us. And when the inner landscape is cleared, when all parts of the soul have taken their rightful place, new horizons open. This raises the question, how does this transformed inner world interact with the external one? How does the dance with your own shadow affect your ability to build relationships, create, love, and live to the fullest? And how, by integrating the trickster, can we not only change ourselves, but also become a catalyst for change for others, bringing light into their own hidden corner?